So the rest of section 5.1 is simplifying expressions, okay? This actually, after section 5.1 is going to get easier because you're going to know how far to go. The hard part about this is, how far do I simplify? What do I do? Well, there's different little tricks and tools that we're going to learn and we're going to practice for you to try, okay? The first thing is to change everything into terms of sines and cosines. This is one tool that you can use. So secant is equivalent to 1 over the cosine of x. Tangent is equivalent to the sine of x over the cosine of x, and then I have the sine of x, and I'll put it over 1. So what ends up happening here is I have sine squared over cosine, so I have 1 over the cosine of x minus sine squared of x over the cosine of x. Again, sine squared, we put our squared in here. I already have a common denominator, so I can combine that. 1 minus sine squared of x over the cosine of x. And the more that you do these, the faster you're going to be able to recognize this. But 1 minus sine squared is right here. 1 minus sine squared is equivalent to cosine squared. So I can change this to cosine squared of x over the cosine of x. And one of those cancels, and I'm left with the cosine of x. So this simplifies all the way down to here. All right, here's another one. Cosecant, now notice my 90, my pi halves is first, okay? So I can look on my sheet. If you don't remember, cosecant and secant are going to be your cofunctions. So cosecant of pi halves minus theta is the same as secant. So I'm going to put a negative secant of x because that is equivalent to secant. Now, this is a problem that I could easily change everything to sines and cosines, but I have two terms, okay? I see this term and this term, and I see they both have a negative, and I see they both have a secant. So I can factor out a negative secant of x, and I'm left with 1 plus tangent squared of x. And again, the more you do these, the more you practice, the more you're going to recognize this. This 1 plus tangent squared is right here, and that's equivalent to secant squared. So I have a negative secant of x times a secant squared of x, and secant times secant squared is going to give me a negative secant cubed of x. And the hard part again about these is we don't know how far to go. There are a couple in the homework that are buggers, and I will not assign those because I'm not going to be there to help guide you, and so I'm not gonna assign them. But for these, I'm gonna give you the ones that are reasonable. Okay, so the ones that you should be able to do. I'm gonna try and pick out any that are really, really ugly.